I always say that the best thing about consulting are the people that you work with. You're always working with the best, pushing each other to learn more, do more, be more, and go even further. Which is why I'm very excited to be able to go through these conversations with some of our alumni who've gone on to even greater success beyond their consulting career, and learn from them about the high points, the low points, the achievements, the wins, and the lessons that we can all take and apply in our future journeys. Mounira, welcome to our Experience Center in Dubai. It's great to have you today. I've gotten your permission to not call you Dr. Mounira, although you do have a PhD and a master's and a bachelor, and you've just told me you just completed an owner management program at Harvard. So clearly somebody who's not only in the education sector, but also passionate about learning herself. So it's great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Karim.
And it's going to be, I have no doubt that we're going to have covering a lot of things, a lot in your journey, because you've built businesses, you've worked with us in strategy and in the Ideation Center. You've built 2 businesses, you've written 2 books. I believe you're writing your 3rd book, and you managed to do all of this while also raising 2 kids. So clearly a superwoman of sorts that we need to learn as much as possible from you and see how our listeners and viewers can benefit from learning about your journey.
Thank you, Karim. I was actually coming in this morning and I was thinking it's been 12 years since I was with Booz & Company at the time, strategy, and today. So it's over a decade, and it's been a really interesting journey, and really my work in the industry has been pivotal in shaping my journey.
One thing that's very interesting when looking at your journey, Mounira, is clearly you were somebody who was interested in education. You had pursued a PhD, so that usually takes you more into a very academic type research behind the scenes role, but you chose to sort of marry the research angle and the consulting angle, and you specifically wanted to go after a consulting role. Tell me a little bit what the thinking was at the time and whether it has panned out as you expected it to.
Okay, so I'll go back a little on why education, and then why I took this pivot in general. I've always wanted to be in education. I mean, it's one of the sectors where I feel you can create most impact in the short term that we have in this life. I thought that if I wanted to make a significant impact in this sector, the traditional route would be to go through academia. And I pursued that. Traditionally, I worked as a teacher, did my master's degree in curriculum development, then did a PhD in teacher education, which were the areas that I really wanted to focus on. I finished my PhD journey. I was having my first son at the time, and that was challenging as well, and my research journey. I graduated, and immediately, the second day after graduation, I was like, I'm unemployed. I'm an academic, yes, with a degree from Oxford and everything, but I'm unemployed. What are my options today after this degree? Do I really want to continue the research journey? Do I want to go into industry? Again, my central question was, how can I make the most significant impact in this sector? Had it been academia, I would have taken that journey. But at the time, in the year in which I graduated, academia was not the right industry for me. It would have been gender segregated. It would have been, maybe it would have limited my understanding of what's happening in the sector as a whole. And I remember very well, because there are certain moments in our career where we make decisions that make a very big difference. And I was on a flight with my husband, and my husband is a banker. And I was telling him, I'm very anxious, like I just graduated, I'm unemployed. He's like, you're always anxious about the next step. He said, why don't you consider consulting? And really, in Arabic we say lamba nawarat, so I had like a moment. And I was like, okay, let me start to look at what's available in the industry for a person who has a PhD in education. I wasn't your engineering background or your MBA background. Maybe you'd look at my CV and I don't fit the initial criteria if it's an AI doing the criteria. And I found a very interesting hybrid role with the strategy or Booz & Company at the time, which was the Ideation Center, where I could really work on intellectual capital and leverage my expertise as an SME, and also work on projects and work with interesting people. And that's how it started.
And when you decided to take this path because you wanted to have impact, did you already have in your mind the plan? I'm going to do this for X number of years, then I'm going to go start the company, then I'm going to start an online platform, and it all was and then I'm going to be part of government and so on. Or how did, looking back, how do you connect all the dots now?
Yeah. I did not have a plan at all. I always had a central question: what's the right vehicle for this phase in my life? Consulting was definitely the right vehicle to begin my career. You work with the best people in the industry. It's an industry that is really making a difference in the region. It's a region that's changing, that's transforming, and it's making a difference in the region. So I worked with amazing people, great mentors, worked on different projects. I learned, maybe the best thing I learned in consulting is how to express what I want to say in short and concise and convincing, in a short and concise and convincing manner. And that's not what you learn in academia. In academia, you learn to write and take your time and asking, very big questions. But in consulting, you really need to be oriented and focused into solving a problem in the most pragmatic manner possible. And that was a very big shift for me.
So you spent some time with us in Booz or Strategy and in the Ideation Center. And then afterwards, you went on to create Emkan Education. So clearly, the focus on education was still there in your mind in terms of your career, in terms of where you wanted to work. Tell me a little bit about this transition, why you chose to start a company rather than other options that were available to you.
Great. So I did 2 years of consulting. I think I tried to learn as much as I can in the 2 years that I've had with Strategy and. I've worked on very different engagements. Some of them were workforce related, others were directly K-12, some were research related, some were healthcare. So it really broadened my perspective of what a public sector practice does. But one of the things that, was really, it was something I was thinking about at the time, is that a lot of sectors are moving very fast, but maybe it's the nature of education and healthcare sectors. They're just slower in moving and transitioning than other sectors. So I used to see the impact of consulting on the finance sector, on the digital sector, but education was slower moving. So we had an idea at the time, and Emkan Education is not only my company. I have 2 amazing partners who are my friends since childhood, and they're a big part of the story. That it's a story of friendship. It's not just a company. We were all talking about what was going on in education at the time. One of my partners was working in a university. My other partner was leading the Mawhiba program in the Western region, so working in the gifted education space. And I was at the time, I had left consulting and considered a government role at the time. But again, it was too slow moving. So we thought, what's the real problem there? And how can we add value? And then the idea of Emkan came. Why not build a vehicle that focuses on that gap, that execution gap? So how can you really bridge the gap between policy and practice? We see a lot of strategy documents, a lot of great strategy work. In fact, when I look at the strategy work in the education sector, and I've been in the sector for 15 years now, for the past 10 years, the strategy documents are not very different. But the difficulty is in the execution. So we've been talking about privatization for a long time. We've been talking about building capacity of the workforce for a long time, but there is a real execution gap in that sector. And we thought, with our local background, our understanding of the sector, we've been working in the sector, we got our hands dirty in the sector, so why not build that vehicle? And Emkan Education was born. But it was very challenging. Imagine leaving consulting, then leaving government, then saying, well, now I have my own consulting firm and I want to compete for projects, and I'm specifically interested in projects that are maybe not in the strategy phase, but the next phase is on how we can add value. And it was very challenging to start the company. It was very challenging to have that first client who's really going to trust you, that you're going to be able to deliver. So it was not rosy. I think the first 2 to 3 years were very challenging.
It's always challenging to start your own business, but was it a natural choice? What drove you towards the entrepreneurship path as opposed to, you could have gotten, I'm sure, a good job in a company or in an organization. You had jobs in government as well. So What
Yeah.
pushed you towards entrepreneurship? Is it something that comes intrinsically from you? Is it something that...
Yeah. I think it's intrinsic, and I've noticed that in my different the different stages that I've had. I think I was an entrepreneur in strategy and with the hybrid role that I had. One thing that really allowed me to be an entrepreneur at the time is really having seniors that allowed me to test new things or new ideas. So that was great. Then moving to government, I think I was an entrepreneur as well, because we had a mandate to set up a new regulatory entity in Saudi. It was a paper. There was no building, no strategy. It was basically an idea. And I was one of the first employees at the time to help develop the strategy for this entity. And it was something I'm very excited about, because at that time, we never had an external regulatory entity. We had the Tatweer education program, which was a delivery arm, but we did not have a real regulator for the sector. And
This
that was
entity,
very exciting.
this
Hey,
entity
Tatweer
is ETEC, yes.
Today
ETEC. So,
it is ETEC,
Okay.
and it's across K-12, technical and vocational higher education. At the time, the focus of ETEC was K-12 and a little bit of higher education, but the organization has grown to cover many important areas. So that was entrepreneurial as well.
because you were, even though it was government, you were starting something
I was
from
starting
scratch.
something from scratch. So that was very exciting. Then Emkan, the idea of Emkan came, and I was moving to Dubai with my family.
But you make it sound like it's just a very normal thing for somebody to just leave the security of a job and start a company. So give me a little
Yeah.
bit of insight there. It can't have just come as a thing.
No.
Where did the influence? Is it your upbringing? Is it your family, your husband? Where did it come from, this desire to have your own business and to grow it?
I don't have an exact answer, but it's really always the same question is, how do I create the most impact? If at that time, when we were setting up ETEC, I thought it was ETEC, I would have stayed there. Of course, I had family, like I was moving my family, for example, from Saudi to UAE. So we were moving around at the time, so I couldn't continue my government role. But again, the question was, what's the best vehicle for this phase?
Okay.
And if the best vehicle in the next, I don't think I'll be leaving entrepreneurship in the next 5 to 6 years. But if after 6 years it's a different vehicle, I'd be okay to move and do something else. I think I still have that entrepreneurial streak in me, but I haven't had a boss in a very long time, so I don't know what that's going to feel like. But I'd be interested in exploring other areas as long as they help me meet my objectives, and that is, I state my objective very clearly in my CV, by the way, and it's to make a significant impact in education in the region and in Saudi Arabia. That's what I want to spend my life doing, and that's how really Emkan was born.
Clearly, the entrepreneurial streak didn't go away, because after Emkan, you also started Aanaab, which is
Yes.
of a digital platform for teacher training in this
Yes.
currently. What was the thinking there?
So I was doing the advisory work for about 9 years. A lot of experience in the advisory work. We had at the time also a partnership with Cambridge Examination. So we went into schools. We started doing the IGCSE A level and AS level for school. So I had gotten, I think, that government and that school experience. The thinking at the time, how do we create most impact now? We're doing great government work in Saudi Arabia. Emkan is not yet a regional company, so we're not doing work in the GCC. Most of the work that we do is in Saudi. How can we scale? And it was the beginning of the digital transformation age in general. So we thought, how do we move from service to product? Again, I don't encourage people who have a service company to just decide to move into product, because you have to ask the right questions. You have to have the right product. There has to be a real problem that you want to solve. So it wasn't just that we wanted to expand service to product, but we had really seen a problem. We were doing advisory work, all good. The problem comes back to one issue. The workforce is not yet ready to move the industry from A to B. So how can we build a platform that really focuses on the industry? and on growing the industry. And at the time, I had started my Harvard program, the Honor President Management Program. And there was a data point that I read there that said that 39% of people who were studying on the edX platform were teachers, because you had to always update your knowledge on what's going on. Students are always up to date. They're usually faster than their teachers in a lot of things. So it was an interesting data point. Again, I had a moment. Why not build an e-learning platform for teachers in the region? Is there a business case there? Is this going to be a charity, or is it going to be a real education technology company? How will it create impact? So there were a lot of big questions, and we started testing or seeding the idea inside Emkan. So if we had a government project, okay, let's build an e-learning platform and train the teachers with that. And when we started to see that there's traction and there's need, we split both companies. So today they're sister companies. I'm totally focused on the edtech industry. Again, I'm an educator that went into technology.
Yes.
Not my expertise, but I think being a lifelong learner and always wanting to learn helps, but you definitely need the right team around you. I will never be a techie. And no matter how much I follow the industry, I will never understand what it means to be a techie. So you need to have the right people, the right partners, and all of that.
Absolutely. All the research we do also shows that not only do you need the right team, but being multidisciplinary. So the fact that you're not a techie is actually a plus, not a minus. So having different backgrounds around the table is always a source of strength.
Yes.
Excellent. So we talked about the tech a little bit. Clearly now we're at an age where AI has reached the point where it's beginning to have a very visible impact on how various sectors work. Education is definitely one of them. We just went through a small demo before we sat down, where you looked at some immersive experiences that could be applied to education. There's lots of companies out there that are beginning to create sort of AI-driven tutors and so on. And you're in this sector, you have a platform. Clearly Saudi is going through a transformation that's not only at the societal level, but also at the technology level. How do you see yourself marrying the two trends in how you do and how you see the impact that you're having?
Okay, I'll go back to the AI question in the education industry, and then I'll tell you how it's going to fit with Aanaab. So AI has been in education for a very long time. It's just because of the advent of ChatGPT, we think it hasn't been there, but it's really been there for a while. I mean, all the
in the background.
Yeah, in the background. The adaptive learning, the testing. So there was a survey for the industry last year about AI, and the assumption from practitioners in the edtech sector was that AI is going to disrupt assessment and testing the most. And people are interested to look at AI because of its potential impact on improving learning. Again, we don't know. Is it going to improve learning or not? We know that adaptive learning improves learning, but on the long run, is it going to improve learning or not? This is something we don't know yet. So it's been there for a while. Now with the ChatGPT and everything that's happening with learning language models, I think if you don't keep up, we're going to be out of the game very soon. So it's already something we're thinking about at Aanaab. Obviously, I'll put a caveat there because we also don't understand how this sector or these technologies are going to be regulated in the future, and they do need to be regulated, especially with education and with kids and with teachers. Do I see a role of AI in Aanaab? 100%. We're already talking about it. How can it help teachers develop lesson plans? Because it can basically improve the discrepancy between quality of teachers. If you have a very junior teacher who doesn't really know how to develop a proper lesson plan or needs guidance, more guidance in developing lesson plans, you have that technology that can give him or her the right lesson plan to go into the classroom. So definitely we're looking at how we can use it, so that we're thinking about today. We're still in the brainstorming phase. How can we use chatbots to improve our response to learners? How can we increase engagement through adaptive learning? We're not there yet, but it's something I think we're going to look at in 2024. Hope that's not too late.
At the rate things are moving, you might find yourself looking at it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Mounira, you've chosen a sector that is quite impactful. You talk a lot about impact. It's changing a lot. When you say, and you said your mission is, your question that you always ask yourself is, where can I have the greatest impact? Looking back at what you've achieved so far, how would you define your greatest impact to date?
My greatest impact is maybe showing other people that you can reinvent yourself, even in difficult sectors. Not that we haven't created, I think, or haven't been part of historical moments in the sector. We have. So we've been at the advent of, for example, but that's not what I consider my greatest impact. My greatest impact is the ability to inspire others. But we've been part of the first, for example, foreign investment in education in Saudi. That was something we were a part of. We were the first MENA company that got that license from Cambridge to really develop IGCSE. So we've been, I think, part of important changes in the sector. We were handling, the privatization file when we were still beginning to talk about privatization in the education sector with the National Center for Privatization at the time, and really considering the idea of charter schools. So if you want to ask me about project by project that I've seen happen, so for example, now at Aanaab, we're training KG music teachers for the first time in KSA. This was amazing. It was amazing to attend, to see, to hear the music, to see the teachers engaging with it, to know that children next year are going to be hearing music and rhythm in the classroom. So this has all been great, but the real impact is just showing others that inshallah it can be done. If you want to. It takes a lot of resilience and it can eat away at you, but it can be done.
When you talk about the others that you're inspiring,
younger generations who want to start their own business, who want to go into their own career. I do a lot of mentoring. I'm most proud of the team that left Emkan and Aanaab, and today they're in amazing places and doing amazing things with their lives. And just to feel that you were part of them finding themselves is so critical, because I've had people who supported me in my career. So I think that's the most impact.
You've picked several things that are not easy to do. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It's even harder to be a female entrepreneur. It's not easy to raise a family. You're doing all three things at the same time with side things like writing books and so on. Now you come across as somebody who is quite established. You're confident of where you are and the impact you've had, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a smooth journey. Pick some of the difficult moments for me, and what lessons did you learn from them?
I've had so many. I've had more difficult moments than successes. At least that's how I see it. I've had moments where I thought I'm done. I'm closing down the company. We've had, at least when we first started Emkan, it was very difficult to do two things. Attract talent, the talent that will help you really achieve the dreams that you want. Why would you come to Emkan if you have an opportunity to be at strategy and, for example? And the second thing is really to ensure the financial health of the company and compete. And I've had moments and days. I remember a time in the summer. I was in the summer and I worked all the time. I never stopped working because you just can't when you're an entrepreneur. And I was with my family in London, and I got to a point in the early days of Emkan where we just couldn't sustain the company financially, given the payments and the payment cycles and how the industry was. And I just went to the Hyde Park and I started crying very loudly. Like everybody could hear me crying. Oh, I can't do this anymore. And you get these breaking moments, but then you just have, there's always a solution. That's what I learned. Today you tell me you look established. No. Now when everything's falling apart, I know there's a solution. There is always something that you can do. So for example, at that time we had not considered taking leverage or loans to grow the company. And one of the things I learned at HBS is double down on your leverage. I mean, that's how you're really going to grow your company. And it's a culture that we didn't have as a female in the MENA region, and going to apply for loans. I thought, that's going to be something new, but that's how the company really grew, is getting the right cash flow to ensure that you can grow the business and sustain it on the long run.
So you're in Hyde Park, you're crying loudly.
Yeah. It was
how did you recover from? It's funny now. I'm pretty sure it wasn't funny when you were going through it. How did you go back from crying loudly in Hyde Park to finding a solution? What is it that got you across
support system. So having people you can consult that can advise you and tell you, don't jump to conclusions. As simple as that. Because when you're at a breaking point, you want somebody to tell you, take it easy. Okay, maybe there's something you're not seeing. And entrepreneurs need support systems. And everybody today in their career, we need support systems. Like we have career advisors, mentors, therapists, family, and we need support systems, and we cannot undermine that. I think I had a good network of advisors. Number one. Two, really taking a step back, saying I'm not, obviously what we were doing before was not working, so taking a step back and rethinking things. And I think this is not, maybe I was going through that at the time, but if you look at industries today, all industries are taking a step back. Yes, we're moving forward when it comes to technology, but we're all reinventing the industry that we're in. Like in my visit today, I was amazed how consulting is being reinvented. Because today consulting is not only consulting, it's technology, it's experience, it's capacity building. So it's not the traditional, when I went into consulting, even maybe before, I went in 2012, but it was still fairly traditional. In the last maybe 4 to 5 years, things started changing. You just reinventing how you were doing things.
Okay. You mentioned before that you were working all the time. Clearly, it's already hard to start a business, and especially if it's in the beginning. But you raised a family, you have 2 children. Tell me a little bit about the trade-offs that you had to. Were they conscious trade-offs that you had to make between work and family? Were there times when actually the family won? How did you get to the point where you look back and you say, yes, I did a good job. I've managed to do both things in a way that satisfies me on both fronts?
I was raised in a family where my mother didn't work. So she was always present. Okay, so I don't have an image of a working woman. So I didn't really have a model to follow. And when I was a very young mother, I did not know if I was doing the right thing or not. If you ask me today, my kids today are 13 and 9, I think I did I took the right decisions. But if you ask me when my kids were 1 and 4, I was sure I was not taking the right decision. So I always tell young mothers that the biggest mistake is thinking that you're making the wrong decision by working, because you really have to self-actualize yourself. Your kids are going to look at you one day, and at some point in their life, they will really respect what you do. And I really believe in parenting through modeling. But it was hard. Traveling and leaving the kids for days. I used to cry every time I'm at a client site. At night, I feel guilty, so I cry for leaving the kids. I tried everything, putting cameras at home. I learned that from the UK, because when I put my kid in daycare, so I have a thing, like when my kids turn 1, on their first birthday, their gift is, I'm taking you to daycare. So it's something I do. Khalas, 1, you're 1 now, you can sit, you can maybe walk a little bit, I'm taking you to daycare. And I was studying at the time, so it was very challenging to leave my kid at daycare. But in London, I had the opportunity to really see what my son was doing via the camera. So I used to go to the British Library, study, and then look at what Abdullah's doing in school. So I did that in the first couple of years, just to ensure that at least from a safety perspective, they're fine. But then I realized that my kids are learning things when I'm not there. They're learning good things actually when I'm not there because they're doing it on their own. So they're being more resilient. And now that I've been a mother for over a decade, and I see the impact on my kids, and I know it can be challenging, and we will have challenges because every kid is different. But I tell young mothers, it's not the work. It's actually a big lie that they tell you that it's your career that's gonna happen. No, it's other things.
Like what?
It's other things. It's bonding. It's your kids' personalities. Sometimes your kids are, just your kids. They're human beings on their own, so they will have to go through their own journey. So taking back everything and blaming yourself is not the right approach because there are so many other factors. Why do women think that their career is the factor that is going to screw up their family? No, it's just something that has been embedded in our head, but it's not necessarily true.
You mentioned that your husband is a banker,
Yes.
so that also doesn't sound like an easy career.
It's very difficult.
And you start building a business. What role does having a supporting spouse play in
The
making
biggest
this
role.
work?
The biggest. When I say I had great mentors, Badr was one of them, and extremely supportive. My husband today is the CEO of JP Morgan. When I ask him, I tell him, I have an important client meeting. I need to be there. I need you to be with the kids. He says yes. So it's having that. If I didn't have that, definitely, I wouldn't be able to achieve not even a quarter of what we have today. He's been an advisor. He feels like Emkan and Aanaab are his companies as well because I talk about them all the time. The kids, the same. So he's been pivotal in everything.
And I'm sure likewise you've been helpful in
I
him
hope
getting
so.
his career on
I
track.
hope so.
We talked a lot about the business lessons. We talked a little bit about some of the challenges. Between Mounira and herself, the voice in your mind, the well-being, the mental aspect of keeping things under control. You talked about stepping back. What advice do you have for others who are going through tough, challenging paths, such as yourself, in terms of keeping themselves in good shape mentally, not only physically?
Definitely get help. If you need help, I'm the kind of person that I'm not sure if it's the entrepreneurial streak in me, but I rarely asked for help as a younger person. Today, I'm exactly mid-age. I don't know if 40 is mid-age, but I'm exactly that. I ask for help. And I'm very comfortable asking for help.
From whom?
It can be family members, it can be friends, it can be your network, your work network, whatever or whoever. But I do ask for help and I leverage my network. When I was younger, I did not do that. I was too embarrassed to do that, or I did not want to show that I needed help. But now, no, I'm very comfortable doing that. So if you're starting off your career and you're building your business, and yes, it's okay to get help. You don't have to do everything on your own. There is no human being that does anything on their own anyway. So that's one. The second thing I would say, again, I didn't know that because you asked me, would you have imagined that your career would go this way? I would have never imagined that. But really knowing that at the end, the dots will connect. But there is a very big difference in having a non-linear career and job hopping. And I tell that to the younger people, that job hopping is just purposeless. You're just hopping from, when I look at the CV and somebody's hopping 1 year to another, it's purposeless. But having a non-linear career, that's life. for a lot of people, non-linear careers is what's going to happen. So, yeah, just know that at the end the dots will connect.
Have faith in the outcome.
Yes.
Okay. And as a final question, you talked a lot about impact on the education sector. You talked about your own personal journey. We talked about the balances of having a career and raising a family. I don't know if you've had the chance to talk with your kids about how they perceive the role model that you've created for them. Have you had this conversation? Do you know how you've changed their perception of a working entrepreneur, or their perception of a working mom?
Okay. First, and this is really, people find it surprising. I'm not a helicopter mom at all. Actually, they rarely see me in school. Maybe they don't even know my name. And I tell that to my kids. And I think setting expectations with your kids is important. That I'm not going to be there in the coffee morning or the whatever. I'm not going to be there in this. I have work, or I'm in the office or whatever. So did I have the chance to talk to them about it? I try to watch them and observe them more than push them in a certain direction. So if I see Abdullah, for example, liking something, I encourage him, but I never force. So I see him, he's very analytical, he likes technology, whatever. So I try to encourage, but I never force. And he might not take an entrepreneurial track, and that's fine. Every other day, like we were talking about what subjects he needs to choose for IGCSE. I didn't even interfere. Like, he told me, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? He's like, Fulan's mother is telling him he has to take this. I told him, you don't have to take anything. You choose what you think you will enjoy doing.
So you're not pushing him. You're not pushing to become consultants or to start businesses.
I think that we discussed this, that being a consultant in the beginning of his career is actually very good. And we talked about this. So when he talks to other people, he says, I will do consulting. He might not know what consulting is, but he understands that he will learn a lot of things. Like with my daughter, Yasmin does these bracelets, and she's entrepreneurial, and she sells them in school. I don't know if she sells.
Clearly the influence is there then.
But it's a thing that kids do now, and it's not... I encourage her to be whoever she... I have no particular path for them, as long as me and their father always tell them this: you do something you love, you do it well. Mm-hmm. That's it.
What's next for Mounira? What's success in the next 10 years?
طيب. One, I want to finish my third book, because I think I'm not going to write after this book. I think this book, I might write a novel, but this book is really about my journey. Mm-hmm. And it's like all the stories that I had and all of that. That's next for me personally. Professionally, I think I want to get things to a finish. They tell you an exit is like starting a company. It's a phase. Mm-hmm. It's not a moment in time. So I want to get the companies, both my babies, whatever, ready for proper exits where I can hand them over to somebody who will do a better job than me at some point. So I want to get Aanaab to that point after we make a significant impact and reach 1 million teachers and reach a number of schools and do all that. So I think I will have given my most, and I want to give it to somebody else. And I want to take Emkan to an exit as well. I hope.
Well, good luck in the next phase of the journey. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Karim. It's a pleasure.